Hi and welcome back to the channel. If it's your first time here, my name's Lee. I operate this channel with my son Ollie. We are based here in Shenzhen, China, and we cover politics, we cover opinion, we cover food and travel, and we cover technology. And today I want to talk about the speech given by the Secretary of State of the US, Antony Blinken. And this speech was regarding the Biden administration's strategy on China. So without further ado, let's get into the video and see what Antony Blinken had to say. So the speech was reported in a Reuters article with the headline, "China's strategy is about rules-based order, not new Cold War," Blinken says. And within the text of it, it says the US's strategy to address China's rise as a great power. It's quite amusing to me why the US think they need to address China's rise. China's population is 4 times bigger than the US. The economy has been growing at a staggering pace due to the policies of the Chinese Communist Party, Chinese government, and due to the hard work of the Chinese people over the last 30 to 40 years. So as the economy keeps growing, it's obvious that their economy will be larger than that of the US. But it seems the US have a big problem with this, as they want to retain their hegemony over how things happen around the world. So I'm going to refer to some notes because there's a lot of information here. So primarily, in his speech with regards to China, he spoke about 3 or 4 main topics, and they were the rules-based order, the UN Universal Charter of Human Rights, the sovereignty and self-determination of countries and nations, and peaceful settlement of disputes. Now, if we take the first one, the rules-based order, what the US really means here is the US rules. And they tend to make those up as they go along. And I think it's very rich for America to try and lecture China about the rules-based order. Now, if we have a look at what's gone on in the very recent past. So first of all, we had America stealing billions of dollars from the Afghanistan government, which is causing the people of Afghanistan to have food issues. That isn't the US's money, it was taken from them. Biden has now tried to say he's giving some of it back to them in aid. Well, actually, it's not Biden's money, it's the money of the Afghanistan people. Second one, we know Russia recently invaded Ukraine, and the Americans, along with some of their European allies, put sanctions, unilateral sanctions on Russia's central bank. As well as that, which is illegal, they also confiscated the assets and seized the assets of people simply because they were Russian. Again, against the international rules. And thirdly, and this has happened in the last few days, the US have took it upon themselves to seize a cargo tanker of Iranian oil. So basically they've stolen a tanker of Iranian oil. So I really think it's very, very rich for the US, a country that does these kind of things unilaterally, to lecture China about the rules-based order. Second, the UN Universal Charter on Human Rights. Now, we know that America like to use this human rights issue when they're attacking countries. We've seen this before in Iraq, we've seen it in Libya. And the reason they like to use a human rights angle or a human rights weapon is that it appeals to their public's emotion. So later, if they can make out that these countries are doing bad things to people, it's easy for them to justify sanctions on those countries to their own people, because people think, oh yeah, they're doing it to help those people, when in fact that is utter nonsense. Now, as you're probably aware, the outgoing Secretary of State Mike Pompeo came up with this story that there was a genocide going on in Xinjiang, complete nonsense. But this has been carried on by the Biden administration. And they're using this as a weapon to basically sanction primarily companies that they feel are out competing American companies. So the first one was Huawei, out competing an American company. Another one, Hikvision, again, out-competing an American companies in the fields of AI and facial recognition technology. DJI, outperforming American company with drone technology. And recently, they then suggested there was forced labour going on in the Xinjiang region, and this has affected the solar industry, again another industry which America were failing to compete with. So you can see from this how they're using this human rights issue to push sanctions onto Chinese companies. And very recently, the High Commissioner for Human Rights from the United Nations, Michelle Bachelet, has visited China and visited the Xinjiang area. But already we see the US, its Western allies and the Western media trying to discredit that visit. The next one is sovereignty and self-determination. Now, Antony Blinken said the US want countries to decide things for themselves, but this is blatantly not the case. The US pump hundreds of millions of dollars into countries trying to exert their influence over political outcomes in those countries. We've seen this so often. And then if they can't achieve their goals with money and the National Endowment for Democracy, they then use their military. And we've seen this on countless occasions. They're trying it in the Philippines at the moment. They're trying it with Myanmar. You know, so many, they're trying it with Thailand. So many countries they try to politically influence to get pro-US governments into power in those countries. And the only reason they want to do that is so those countries will then turn against China. Now, a week or two ago, you had President Biden say that he would have no problem getting militarily involved to help defend Taiwan against China. That statement was quickly walked back by the White House and the administration. But in this speech that Blinken made, he tried to reiterate the fact by saying, "We do not support Taiwan independence." Shortly after he said that, he then went on to say, "We will continue to assist Taiwan in maintaining a sufficient self-defense capability. We will continue to expand our cooperation with Taiwan and support Taiwan's participation in the international community." He also insisted that the US-Taiwan policy hasn't changed when it obviously has. And if you have a look at the wording on the State Department website, they've actually very recently removed the mention that the US considers Taiwan as a part of China, and the mention that they don't support Taiwanese independence. It's blatantly obvious that their policy has changed on Taiwan. Now, my thought is that similar to they've used Ukraine as a proxy to fight a war with Russia, they are wanting to use Taiwan as a proxy to fight a war with China. We already know that there's American troops on Taiwan training Taiwanese troops. And we also know that the US are wishing to spend billions of dollars installing a new high-tech missile system in the Indo-Pacific. But it seems right now that the US can't find any willing participants to host that new missile system. Sovereignty and self-determination. Now, we know that the US doesn't let countries decide for themselves, and we've recently seen this with the Solomon Islands. it was announced that China were about to sign a security pact with the Solomon Islands, and straight away, even though it's thousands and thousands of miles away, the US got very, very upset about this and tried to persuade the Solomon Islands not to do that. And all around the world, we see the US, through NGOs and through National Endowment Democracy, trying to shape the outcome of political elections in many, many countries. And we see this in Myanmar, we see it in the Philippines, we see it in Thailand. And it's going on in many countries because the US want to try and get US-friendly governments into power in many of those countries to try and turn those countries against China. And this is something we're seeing more and more of, but it's obviously not working as well as the US would like, because we see more and more countries turning away from the US and pivoting towards China. And if you look at the Southeast Asian region, pretty much all of the countries in that region do far more trade with China than they do the US. So why would those countries want to become anti-China? China is helping them build infrastructure, it's helping them grow their economies. All the US offers is military, and if they don't fall into line with the US's requests, then those countries risk having their governments overthrown or being invaded by the US military. Throughout the whole of the speech, he framed China as a threat that needs to be contained. And although he says they're not looking for a new Cold War, he mentioned the word defend 13 times during the speech. And who do you think he suggested will defend the world and uphold the international rules-based order against this big threat from China? Yeah, you guessed it, America, of course. Anyway, in conclusion, it's obvious from that Blinken speech that the Biden administration is continuing the policy of the Trump administration, if not making it worse with regards towards China. They will do all they can to contain China's growth because they find it very difficult to accept that China will overtake them. I suspect there will be more sanctions levied towards China. Anyway, let me know what you think in the comments down below. Please continue to support our channel either by sharing it, buy me a coffee, Patreon, and a big thank you to all of those people who do support our channel, whether that's by just sharing the content, supporting us monthly, or supporting us on one-off donations. It's really, really appreciated and allows us to keep bringing you content on this channel. But as always, for now, take care.